Viewer discretion is advised.
The Cincinnati Bungholes. Before you were 0-0 forever in the playoffs and Vontaze Burfict pulled this kind of stuff, you blew 2 Super Bowls and one of them in the last minute. And how about your coach Sam Weish on the mic telling your own fans to stop being pieces of crap?
Point them out. Get them out of here. You don't live in Cleveland. You live in
Cincinnati Bengals, Mike Brown. And speaking of old NFL money and clueless owners, let's not forget about Mike Brown, the owner of the Bengals. If this is confusing, it's okay. Paul Brown is a legend who played and coached for the team begrudgingly named after him, the Browns. Then the Browns did the most Cleveland thing ever, and Art Modell fired Paul Brown in 1963. And he was like, hey, how about I start a team in one city over? And that's what he did when he started the Bengals in 1968. And Mike Brown is the clueless eldest son of Paul, who happens to not give a fuck about players shooting up script clubs.
Roger said he didn't want me in the script club.
Doesn't think his team needs a GM, and lets Marvin Lewis slug his way to mediocrity for over 15 years. This game is interesting because it actually happened on the same day as the previously mentioned game. The Bungles jumped out to a 24-0 lead, and then the Oilers decided to show up, eventually tying the game at 27 and winning in OT. The Bengals, a legacy of failure. Marvin Lewis, what you want, but call him anything but a great coach. But in 2014, he had figured out a way to cheat the system. A little bit. Playing the Bucks, who were driving for a game-winning score, Lewis threw a challenge flag for a review. Problem is, in the last 2 minutes, the booth has to call for a review. The Bengals were charged a timeout, but the booth did look at the play and found that there were 12 men on the field. The Bengals won and probably choked in the playoffs later that year. That's probably what happened. I have to give props to Paul Brown Stadium, as it is one of the few that has never sold its naming rights to the highest bidder. But I think by the time we are done, it will be named Marvin Lewis Stadium in 2045 after he gracefully retires, having never seen a playoff win inside its doors. The stadium is nicknamed the Jungle.
Oh, snap.
Not many people remember that the '86 Bears were a tough squad, and the defending champs still had many of their Super Bowl shuffle players from the year before, including their defense that picked off Boomer Esiason 4 times in this game. The Bengals could only muster 60 yards rushing, as this game was the worst beatdown in their franchise history, but hey, it won't be as bad as the others you're about to see. The team that tends to stick with the same mediocre coach actually pushes the envelope the most when it comes to their uniforms. If you happen to be on a safari in Africa and you get lost in the jungle, this would be the jersey you would want to be wearing. Not that it's gonna help camouflage you, I just think that a Bengals fan getting eaten by a real tiger would be the utmost in irony. And now the opposite of the Browns coaching carousel, this team doesn't know when to let go, as they have held on to Marvin Lewis with a grip tighter than a married man with internet access and private browsing. Year after year of backfire goodness, as Mike Brown shoves his chips all in on Marvin and says let it ride, and his 15-year tenure has produced an 0-7 playoff record. And speaking of backfires, Vontaze, we still had more game to go, buddy. I flat guarantee Lewis is back next year. The dude is more indestructible than Boris the Blade.
Apparently, it's just impossible to kill the boss.
And since I am super lazy, Flemlo Raps will critique the Bengals mascot, Houday.
It's hard out here for a Bengals fan, bro. I mean, we started the year 4-1. I thought maybe we had a chance to win a playoff game for the first time since I was 2 years old. Turns out, we can't even win the goddamn Tank Bowl. That our mascot is named after our famous chant. And to be honest, that dude deserves a raise, because he's provided pretty much all the excitement that we've had this entire year. And yeah, I know a tiger is supposed to be intimidating, scary. And Houday just looks kind of soft and comfortable, like Marvin Lewis over the last 15 years. But if we being real, I'd rather have Houday on the sideline as opposed to Hugh J, if you know what I'm saying. I swear, bro, if they hire that dude, I might just have to join our mascot, covering my face in shame. Bro.
Let's put the logo on a bench, as you have watched every team in your division get better while you have done pretty much nothing. Alright, change these stripes into scars for the Marvin Lewis era, and change the color to white to represent the ghost of Andy Dalton. And Bengals fan, this clip of Flemlo raps during the offseason pretty much sums up the salt content for most of the franchise history.
My Bengals are now in the AFC North basement with the mold and the roaches and the rats. Being a Bengals fan, you could always fall back on that one thing, that one saving grace. Like, at least we ain't the Browns. The Browns, the Giants, Eli, John Dorsey, Hugh Jackson, Colin Cowherd, Bernie Kosar, Mike Brown, definitely. And pretty much that's my reaction to the Odell trip. So I've been seeing on Twitter, on YouTube, all different types of places, people saying we're gonna finish 3-13.
You're going 3-13 this year. How about number 1, hiring Hugh Jackson, and 2, having his ex-DB Demarius Randall hand him a game ball during the game? Marvin Lewis was the worst sacred cow of all time. I'd say you wasted Andy Dalton's career, a guy who's more appreciated in Buffalo, but wasting mediocre talent is nothing compared to the crimes you committed against AJ Green. That's actually sad, bro, but I doubt Mike Brown is shedding a tear. Though a place that has distributed pain to the heart like Indian curry, Paul Brown really is aesthetically one of the nicest in the league. It scored slightly above average in every category I had, giving it a slightly above average score, which somehow puts it in the bottom third. Math, how does it work? If you think the Bengals are bad now, try looking at some of the teams they fielded in the 90s. The most egregious were the ones led by Dave Shula, son of legendary coach Don Shula. And the apple didn't fall from the tree at all, or something like that. Shula coached the Bengals for 4 seasons, going 19-52 in the process. That's only 328 fewer wins than his dad. Dick LeBeau was a great defensive coordinator. He was not, however, a good head coach. LeBeau won just 12 of his 45 games in Cincy, while his predecessor Bruce Coslet went just 7-28 from 1998 to 2000. This team was trotting out quarterbacks like Neil O'Donnell, Jeff Blake, Akili Smith, and John Kitna, who along with Blake was decent. But all that losing did help them land Carson Palmer, who got them started on their quest to lose as many wildcard games as possible. Palmer gave way to Andy Dalton. Dalton and Marvin Lewis gave way to Zach Taylor, and now the Bengals are just as bad as they were back then. Unless Joe Burrow has something to say. God damn. Paul Brown falls well short of the capacity criteria, and the weather doesn't help. Plus issues with choke points in the stadium, like only one access ramp to the upper deck, would make for a salty Super Bowl experience for the fans. Big fat striped no. The Bears were so in control in this 1986 game at Cincy that they played 3 different quarterbacks. That's insulting. To be fair to the Bengals, just scoring a single touchdown against the famous 4-6 Chicago defense was something of a win. They shut out a lot of teams and kept many doctors employed back then.